Good morning and welcome to your Friday Faith Fill Up. Coming to you from youth camp. Camp has been such a blessing. The kids, as always, have been an encouragement and a blessing in letting God move in their lives. I hope you'll be at church on Sunday evening to be able to hear some of the testimonies. And as you can tell, my voice is in full camp mode. Started off the week without much of a voice and started to get it back, and then the camp stuff started setting in, and this is my voice now, which kind of I'm going to use as a little bit of an example. I'm doing the music at camp, and I had a lot of things that I've planned and a lot of things I want to do, and then I come here and I don't really have the voice to be able to do all of those things. And quite honestly, that was a little bit disappointing, and the reason it was disappointing is because I had an expectation. I had something that I wanted, something that I maybe had a vision for, and something that I saw, and it wasn't exactly the way that I wanted it to be. One of our preachers was talking about expectations yesterday morning, and one thing that he brought up was Cain. Cain had an expectation that God was just simply going to accept his offering, even though it wasn't right, even though it wasn't what God required of him. And the Bible tells us that he was wroth, that he was angry, he was mad because God wouldn't accept that, because his expectation was let down. Psalm 62 verse number 5 says, "My soul, wait thou only upon God, for my expectation is from him." This tells us where our expectation ought to be. It should be solely upon God. And I'll say more about just being on him here in just a minute, but before we go too far into that, there's a few thoughts that I have. Sometimes our expectations are based on our emotions. We have an emotion maybe tied to an event, kind of like camp. We have an emotion that's tied there. And when things don't go in that same way that we've expected, because that's what our emotions have led us into, then when it's not that, we're disappointed, we're discouraged, we even get to a place of defeat because of those expectations. Sometimes it's simply because of hopes that we have. We may have an expectation based on something that we really want to see happen. We really want to see something good come out of maybe a situation, or something profitable in an investment or something like that. That's a hope that we have, and our expectation being in something like that. And when it's let down, certainly we're disappointed because that expectation was not met. I think sometimes we have an expectation also based on a false view of other people. Maybe we have an expectation because we think and we know so-and-so is going to respond this way, or they're going to react this way to a certain event or something like that. And when it doesn't happen, we're kind of disappointed. Probably our first Christmas, if I remember, together, Wanda and I got her a gift that I thought was the best gift, and I was so excited about it. And my expectation was that she was going to be excited as I was about it. Now, remind you, this is our first anniversary, or our first Christmas together, if I recall correctly. And I bought her a vacuum cleaner, which really isn't probably the best thing to do on your first Christmas together. My expectations with that were based on my false view of her. I thought she was going to be excited and fired up about this brand new vacuum with all of these extra features. Well, needless to say, that didn't go over too well. My expectation was not met because of my false view of how somebody else was going to respond. Again, our verse tells us in Psalm 62, "My soul, wait thou only upon God, for my expectation is from him." Our hope, our expectation, the thing that we are anticipating, ought to be based upon him. It ought to be based on who God is and what God can do. I had one of our young people talk to me about camp this week and said, I came in with some expectations that were wrong. Based on different things, expectations that this person had. And my mind went to this verse that our expectation many times is something that we want for ourselves. It's something that we want for us, but ultimately it's not really even based on something for God. It's not based on something about God. And ultimately, when that happens, our expectation isn't going to be met, much like Cain. He had a great idea, But when it didn't line up with what truth was and what God expected, that means that he really even looked at God and his expectation was not met because he didn't do things the way that God wanted him to. When I think about our expectations, if we put them in anything, in anyone other than God, we're setting ourselves up to be let down, to be discouraged, to be defeated. But ultimately, we just need to remember where our expectations should be, and then firmly, confidently put our expectation upon God. It says, for my expectation is from him. Any good that's going to come, it's going to come from him. Praise the Lord that we have that, so we can have that expectation. Well, I hope this has been a blessing to you. We'll see you on Sunday morning.